With IoT, sometimes the attacks are subtle. I mean, IoT devices, well, they're in our everyday lives. We see them and we use them constantly. So what value might they have to an attacker? Let's take surveillance cameras. There's a corner in Bath, England, where I once stood and counted 6 CCTV cameras pointed in my general direction. What if a foreign government hacked those CCTV cameras? What would they learn? Well, they would start to map out the people they saw every day, where they came from, where they were going. And they could tell when the street corner was crowded and when it was not. They might even be able to see the license plates clearly on cars parked nearby, and further learn where these people live, or assume that they work nearby. And with these cameras getting more and more sophisticated with resolution, a camera inside a bank could capture passwords being entered into ATMs or banking systems. Or in a medical facility, it could be capturing personal health information. Suddenly, the simple camera is a source of very valuable information. This is the story of defenders of IoT working in hostile environments to protect their country from foreign invaders, and why it's important to focus on the little things, like surveillance cameras. I'm Robert Vamosi. This is Error Code.
So my name is Andrew Hural. I'm an incident response lead with UnderDefense. UnderDefense is a leading company in the field of incident response, of offensive and defensive operations. And I'm leading a team of brilliant boys and girls, brilliant cybersecurity engineers who are really excited about their job. So they, as a specialist in their field, it's always a pleasure to work side by side with them when we discover new threats, when we respond to existing threats, and when we then tell the story to the audience. So I'll be happy to share some ideas, some perceptions that we had, maybe some insights. For some of you, of course, this will be information that you guys know and probably see on a daily basis, but hopefully some information that we share would be interesting for you and maybe helps to guide your incident response in future.
When we talk about incident response, we typically think of network IT systems, of massive data breaches. What we're going to be talking about are the actual exploitations of IoT systems in the field, which is very interesting. I mean, these are small and numerous devices, and they often escape security scrutiny. Well, Andrew's on the front lines. So what is he seeing?
We see a different way for malicious actors to get inside of a system. Typically, it's perceived as IoT device security only, but in a lot of cases, you can see that it's a matter of network security, for example. It's a matter of securing your employees and their access. It's a matter of looking at various fields on where malicious actors can get inside of your perimeter. So I can say that false would be saying that companies focus on IoT security only. You can invest a lot into tools, but you should also pay attention to security monitoring and having people looking in the other aspect of those. So the ones that we mentioned.
So my understanding is, with IoT security, there are layers. You've got the top layer, which is kind of the network layer that connects in and out of the internet, and maybe you've got a DMZ in the middle. And then lower down, you've got this device.
This model that you just mentioned, it can be enriched to up to 7 different levels. So you can also add the human aspect. You can always add the software. You can always add other aspects that you need to pay attention to. And very important for each and every CISO, each and every security analyst who is responsible for security posture within the organization, to pay attention to the fact that it's all about working as a team. All of these layers should be protected and focused on. Like, you cannot have a solid security when you focus only on one aspect of these security operations. So yes, I would say that it's very important to have IoT security. It's important to have vulnerability management of these devices. We can see that a lot of hacks happen because security engineers or IT team just either do not follow their instructions or pay little attention to existing standard operation procedures as patching devices, for example, or having a solid perimeter security, making, for example, network segmentation. So it's important to pay attention to these small, trivial, but very important things. As for me, I should say that more and more often we see that companies are being hacked because their employees are being hacked. So it's important to understand that if you want to get inside of your system, if a malicious hacker wants to get inside of a system, they would look for the weakest and the most exploitable way, the one that provides little or no possible resistance. Would you want to spend a lot of time, money, and efforts on getting into the system? Of course not. You would do this, as soon and as fast as possible. Now, the other thing that I wanted maybe to focus your attention to is that in a lot of cases, modern malicious actors tend to do the espionage action. That means that they wouldn't get into your system, hack, encrypt, and shut down systems as they get in. They would do a lot to stay undercover until the exact time when they want to strike. So they will gather information, they will do recon, they would create additional access, so-called backdoors, in order that they want to return or to share this access with other groups. That happens a lot as well. There are some special groups that focus on getting into the system and then selling this access to another groups, so-called vendors. So it's always a matter of understanding the victimology. I should say that a good incident response team, a good team that focuses on actually finding the root cause of the incident, needs to pay attention to tactics, techniques, procedures that malicious actors take, and correlate these TDPs to actual groups, APT groups, or maybe known or unknown hackers, in order to understand the root cause. Yeah, so if you do not understand the root cause of this, it's definitely, you probably will not get the real insight, and in future you wouldn't be able to protect your environment.
I spoke with Andrew at RSAC 2024 in San Francisco. In the exhibit hall, there were companies hawking EDR, XDR, all of that for traditional IT network systems. Well, IoT and OT, they don't necessarily have those. So how is Andrew getting the information monitoring OT devices?
As for me, it is important to have different, as we mentioned today, different layers of security. And being one, that when we focus on network, that's something that's really important. So if we are speaking about IoT devices, and these devices would be potentially dangerous to the environment in case they talk to outbound systems somewhere outside of your DMZ, out of perimeter, outside of the environment that they are installed in. So once you pick up this activity, once you pick up these possible actions, this telemetry, that's something that might indicate potential incident. So first of all, I would focus on networking. First of all, I would focus on this. Second, of course, I would make sure that there is, in any case, there is a telemetry and data from these IoT devices out of these systems. So if it's possible to get this information, it all depends, of course, on IoT devices, and some are the ones that you would want to get the telemetry out of. Others is really something that you would have little or no value. So if there is a possibility of getting this information, for example, some IoT devices provide you log information, so you would want to have this log data and correlate this log data inside of your SIEM source systems, whatever log management system you have, something that will give you the benefit. The last but not least aspect would be, of course, vulnerability management within all of your infrastructure. So having a visibility on network, on device, and on your vulnerabilities helps you to at least take these 3 points as the starting point in the cybersecurity journey.
So some of the data breach incidents that have made the news involve supply chains. And they've often been compromised early in the supply chain, then propagating to other systems. Is that a factor here?
I would say that supply chains attacks is something that is probably underestimated in the recent years, but it's picking up much more in the years to come. I think the biggest one that all people around the world talked about was the SolarWinds, but it was just as for me, it was just the first fruit. And one of the incidents that we had inside of electric grid was something that we picked up as well. So we've seen the traits of the security incident on different systems and different devices, but it was really hard to capture this small data, small pieces of telemetry and shape it into one security incident.
So if I understand correctly, Andrew is collecting a lot of information from a lot of different systems.
So, there is a lot of possible feeds for getting threat intel at the moment. And it's like hearing the ring or hearing the bell somewhere in the field, but you don't actually pick up the melody until it sounds in your head. So you're right. There were like a number of incidents going on. These incidents were not related. They were happening in a different period of time, but when you correlate them in one timeline, when you put those sounds and they form the melody, that's when you have this, as I said, wow or bingo, and that's what helps to establish a good cybersecurity walls around this now.
He likens this to looking at the night sky and seeing a few stars here and there. Only after time, or with further guidance, do you start to see the stars in the form of constellations.
It's like, when you look at the stars at night, there is like different stars, and you try to see the Scorpion or some other stars, but you do not get it until there is someone maybe who helps you, or when you have a template, or when you pick up the trait of activity. So we managed to see and managed to correlate data and figure out that one of these incidents actually belonged to the Russian APT group, the APT, so-called APT 28, the one that is focused especially on cybersecurity, espionage, and operations that involve the deep undercover activity. So these guys, maybe it's not the proper way to say this, but in some case, when the defenders speak about offenders, about the offensive operations, you can sometimes say that you could admire some actions that they take, because if you do not treat your opponent right, then in a lot of cases you fail. So in this particular case, they were doing a lot of good job to secure their steps, to wipe out any possible steps that might be noticed by the defense team. So when my guys actually pick it up at the force, it was not like a serious incident, but it was like a fourth incident in a row that we had involving different users and different systems, and even sometimes in this case it was a couple of different organizations. So using IOC from different organizations, that helps to pick up this activity. It helped to put it as a puzzle, and when you have a bingo effect in the end, saying, hey, now we know what happened, now we know what's going on. This helps to protect against the overall picture. So now when I understand that A led to B, led to C, just because they wanted to have this information and these steps being taken, that's something that you would want to see.
This order occurs with incident response. You start to see patterns after a while, patterns that could suggest an attack. And so Andrew began to notice after the fourth incident, a pattern was emerging.
In this particular incident, we are speaking about the energy sector. So some small minor incidents, like, for example, DDoS attack, for example. So it doesn't give you the information about why it happened or what happened in general. So you treat it as one of the possible scenarios for malicious actors. But you could not put this puzzle together until you have the whole picture.
And this was not related to dark energy or any of the big attacks that we've seen in the news. This was a smaller attack that Andrew picked up on.
So energy sector is built like a grid, and there is always, all the systems interlapped, and these systems rely on each other. So if you want to get to the top system, it's always a good idea to start from the very low one, and usually the low systems or some systems that on the somewhere in the black end it's not covered by the light a lot. That's where you want to start, and that's what happened in this particular case. So in a lot of CISOs, a lot of people who are responsible for security, they focus on their gems and put a lot of walls around these gems, be it the products, be it the database, whatever they protect. But it's always a good idea to start from somewhere from far apart, and using lateral movement, using some other techniques that malicious actors execute just to get to this system, and so use it for their own purposes. This was the same. So imagine this, we mentioned the grid, and you have like systems connected between each other but in different parts of a country, and you have security incidents happening like miles apart, not in the same environment, like mainly in one environment, but technically in different ones. So it's challenging. Sometimes you have different teams working on different incidents, and then you have to connect the dots, and then you have the picture on this.
Andrew works in the Ukraine, a country that was invaded by Russia in February of 2022. And I would imagine that being part of the Ukrainian CERT, he would have a masterclass of information about different APTs, different operations that are going on in the field today. All of this is being shared among the other CERTs around the world.
The information like threat intel is something that companies and CERTs usually try to share among each other. We want to make world safer, and we are fighting cybercrime in a lot of cases. And once we have information, we see it as our duty to share it with others. Of course, in some cases, in some particular cases, there is information that you cannot share, but you can always have let's say, you can always share something like overall methodology or overall TTPs that malicious actors can use. So having this victimology, having this information in front of you always help you to say that, hey, why don't you pay attention for this and that? It says nothing in general, but it helps companies and CERTs around the globe to cooperate.
We just talked about having different layers in OT. My understanding is a lot of the OT attacks happen at the high level, the network level.
I would say that network is always involved in this, and it's important to pay attention to this aspect. I would say it's sometimes it might be as trivial as it is, but if you have a good network visibility, it helps you to detect and respond to threats at the early stage.
That and having proper access controls.
Definitely. So we touched this a little bit. You want to have a solid network segmentation, solid access, privilege access to different systems, making sure that systems that talk to each other, that they are allowed and privileged to do this. And in case they are not, that's something that should pique your attention at once. It's not the a regular activity for systems to go out, for example, or to beacon or whatever. So using AIs, malicious actors now can leverage a lot of different techniques that was not possible before.
So did Andrew just say that they were using it to hide who they were?
So the typical beaconing would be something that happens in a strict amount of time with some strict interval. We see that it happens a lot that they change it now. So yeah, that's probably, it always happens like this. When a new technology emerges, offenders and defenders need to adapt to this and use it on their behalf.
So we typically look at TTPs and say, oh, well, it's this actor or that actor. We call them APTs after a while. But with AI, they could be this actor or that actor. They could be in this sector or that sector. They could change the TTPs at random.
It's not always a case that you could attribute it to a different APT group. You can do your best guess. And based on different scenarios, you can say that it's, for example, a wolf or it's a bear, or maybe someone else. But it does happen that using different technologies now, you can mask, you can hide, and you can pretend to be someone else. Again, it all depends, as we mentioned, on the goal or the target of this activity. Like sometimes for malicious actors, like for some APT groups, especially the Russian ones, their main goal is to make mess, to make noise, and to say and show that they are inside. So that's where they will not be hiding, and they will be like knocking on your door, opening it wide with their legs, and then just saying that, hey, I arrived. Other groups would behave so much differently, hiding, shifting to espionage, doing everything to be unnoticed. Just because we've said that the supply chain attacks is something that was underestimated. It would be used a lot in the future. I think that it will be one of the biggest challenges for years to come now. Even though companies started doing due diligence for their partners now, even though they are doing a lot of things that was probably like impossible or like even was not a good practice in the recent years, but that's something that would help companies to adopt to a new reality of cybersecurity world.
So we've talked a little bit about OT. What about IoT? Andrew, he has stories to tell.
Let me think about it. Because you said that we were focused on IoT, and I was thinking about the stories in that particular direction. I think that one of the other stories, it might not be that applicable or relevant to IoT, but that was the surveillance cameras that were hacked. So it's like, on the matter of IoT, and I think that there was a brilliant example of espionage action when Russian-backed malicious actors, they were trying to get information out of that were stored and processed by cameras. So a lot of companies enroute the railway stations. They wanted to see what's going on within the foreign aid, within helping Ukraine. They were hacking these cameras and getting the information from this, out of it, so you could track operations. We've seen this as a matter of cyber intelligence. So cyber used for intelligence, cyber used for getting additional information and getting some insights. So I can say that cyber operations are now on the verge of not only a traditional hacking activity, but it's also a piece of so-called intelligence operations. And it's something that we need to take as a reality now and need to face it.
Let me be clear what we're talking about here in the form of cameras. It's not necessarily data that's being collected. It's the live images themselves of secure areas or even common areas.
And this is now all depends on the goals that you want to have. So you can count the number of people going back and forth. You can see happy smiling faces, for example, if it's something you're interested in. Or you can pick up the passwords, for example, or you can pick up the information if the camera is, for example, looking at your screen or your monitor. That's something they can use. The website you visit, or maybe the length of your password, maybe even the exact password or something like that. So it's really a matter of securing everything around the person, everything around the organization, everything around the nation. And it's really very important for us to understand that everyone can be hacked and everyone can be a target. Though a lot of people perceive it wrongly and say that, I have nothing to share, so you guys can, I have no private, my information is not valuable, so you can take whatever you want. I think that's one of the main takeaways that we need to have at the moment, especially for people around the globe who have an access to different sensitive information, but think that they cannot be a target or may not be a target at all.
So Andrew talked about cameras, and this does come up a lot. I mean, there was the Mirai botnet, which was based on IoT cameras. Is there another IoT device that Andrew can think of? Maybe a second tier, a next level that is being exploited in the field?
Not that I can pick up a trend or something. I say that it all comes, at the moment at least, they're trying to get everywhere, and trying to exploit as much as possible, trying to get in different systems, including like energy or water grid. So the higher level of company or organization is, the better and the more efforts they take to get into the system. So that's why these operations would be more and more. It will take much more time for them to develop these operations. It happens like with a ransomware. If you remember, like 10 years ago, ransomware infection was something that was almost like a targeted attack when they wanted to put efforts and hack a particular organization. And at the moment, it's the franchise. So you can buy it, you can use it for a couple of days and get the revenue out of it. So maybe in some near future, especially taking into account that a lot of IoT devices are now connected to Wi-Fi, to some other internet, different connections to internet. So that's something that you would want to focus on, especially, that the easy targets.
Well, I was thinking of routers.
Routers is a wonderful and perfect target. Do a lot of people patch it? Definitely not. Especially if it's the public router, for example, somewhere in the airport or in the railway station. A lot of people connect it. If you put a sign free Wi-Fi, that's something that would attract a lot of attention, and a lot of people will actually use it. And what information do we send using Wi-Fi? No one controls it. As long as we are connected to internet, we do our payments, we check our email, we do whatever. And so malicious hackers can steal your tokens, your passwords, your proprietary information in a matter of seconds. And it doesn't actually matter they will use it at the same moment. It can be used a week, whatever later. And this will help them to dwell, to get inside of the system and do the so-called supply chain attacks in future, if not a direct one, of course. Like I'm saying that, the direct attack in this case is just the simplest possible solution.
I wondered if there was any overview that Andrew could leave us with, any thoughts or best practices.
My own opinion is that, that you need to be a little bit cautious, a little bit paranoid about security. I know it's maybe more because of our professional activity that we do, but I would never recommend people to, store passwords in browser, for example, or do some other activities like sending, the same. If we talk about passwords, sending them over. If we speak about IoT devices in particular, I would say that it's important to keep them protected, safe inside of their environment, inside of their network. It's important to pay attention to these devices as you pay attention to your email security, to your phone, to whatever. We all take care about these devices, but in a lot of cases we do not care about these IoT devices. So definitely I would pay attention to protection of IoT devices itself, to network connections, and to people who manage these devices. It's important.
I'd like to thank Andrew Hural for coming on the show and talking about his firsthand experiences in the field with IoT and OT devices under attack. Hey, if you're enjoying Error Code, tell a friend. I'm sure there are other people out there who like narrative information security podcasts. And I'd really like to hear from you. Join us on Discord. Search for Error Code Podcast to join the server, or go to errorcodepodcast.com to get more details. And tell me what you like, and even what you don't. I have more conversations coming up. I'll have conversations about Secure by Design and more about Operation Volt Typhoon. Subscribe today. I don't want you to miss out.